Well, good afternoon. This is Tommy Ellison, and welcome to my podcast, Senior Moments. Senior Moments is a funny expression, I guess you would say, of someone who is a senior, first of all, and they have their moments. And in my particular case, these moments seem to come to me in conversations sometimes. It just kind of sparks a memory. And the crazy thing about it is it's like an onion, because once I peel that onion, I can remember more and more detail about these stories, sometimes to the point of being, well, I can remember a lot of the details, even though I can't necessarily remember where I have my car keys hidden today, or what I had for breakfast. And if you're 73 like me, you probably are starting to experience this yourself, but that's a whole different story, because I want to tell you one that happened to me back in the early 80s. And the reason I call this episode Counterfeit, in fact, the subtitle was One Size Does Not Fit All. That is a marketing ploy that is used in the clothing business, but being 6'5" and 300 pounds, you see those little tags that says one size fits all, and it's a lie. It's a lie, Now, maybe one size fits most, but one size does not fit all. But anyway, this is, I digress a bit here. The story that I want to tell you, and the reason it's called Counterfeit, is because it's about a replica of the real thing. And that's exactly what this story is about today. It goes back in about 1980, maybe 1981. I was working for an importer of Swedish hospital-grade vinyl flooring. It was a commercial flooring that was used in a lot of hospitals, like the ORs and the emergency areas and clean room environments. And that's what this company did. We imported this product from Sweden, and it was a sheet vinyl. And I'm not trying to sell you a floor here, but it was used for hospitals. And we had one product that was kind of a multi-purpose gym floor as well. And so that's kind of the backstory of why we happened to be in the city of Philadelphia. It was attending a major hospital administrator show. Now, in Philadelphia, I met with a fellow that actually worked for Tarkett, the Swedish company, and he was kind of like our go-to guy to assist us, even though his experience in floors was really in sports floors. He was a former employee of Robbins Sports Services, which I worked with as well through the years. And his name was John Chambers. And John was a product of Philadelphia, tremendous guy, very funny guy. He was a sports addict. If you want to know anything about Philadelphia sports, whether it be baseball, basketball, football, John knew the backstory on just about everybody that was playing back then. Like I said, this is like 1980, 81, somewhere in that neighborhood. John had 12 kids. He was, well, as you probably might imagine, a good Catholic family. And his wife's name was Honey, and she was a sweetheart. She really was. But John had 12 kids, so every time he had opportunity to go out for dinner on the corporate, expense account, he would take that. And that's kind of the backstory of what was happening in this particular episode. He was working for Tarkett, as I said, and he was helping with our marketing. And we were at this hospital show, basically showing our wares to these different hospital administrators. And that's how I come to be in Philadelphia, because I was a regional manager working in the South, trying to promote this product to the architectural community. Well, we went to dinner this particular night at a pretty popular Philadelphia sports bar. The name of it was Frankie Bradley's. It was a pretty well-known place. It was the kind of place where when you walked in, there were pictures hanging on the wall of different celebrities and sports stars that had attended, and they had their picture made there. And autographs were being signed. Now later on, Frankie Bradley's, I'm told now, has completely, well, they went out of business and then they came back into business. It's now a burlesque show bar, featuring drag queens, dancers, and singers. And as I understand it, it's still in Philadelphia. But back then, it was kind of a laid back, think Frank Sinatra, Rat Pack kind of place that they would go and hang out after the shows. That's the kind of place it was. And that's exactly what we were doing. We were going to hang out after this show had ended at the convention center. And so when we walked in, we were placed in a kind of a small holding bar off of the lobby where you could get a drink and, talk amongst yourself while your table was being prepared, especially if you had to wait for a table. And John had this quirky habit of his, is whenever he walked into a situation, a social situation, he would always introduce himself, and then he would take it upon himself to introduce the rest of the group that he was with to whomever might be standing there. In this particular case that night, it was the little bartender who was working that lobby bar area. And so John, in his typical fashion, he said, "Hi, I'm John Chambers. What's your name?" And he said, "Bob," And he said, "Well, Bob, this is Frank Suplee, and this is Dale Staley." And he looks at me and says, "And this is Jerry Sisemore." Now, I had no idea who Jerry Sizemore was. In fact, I looked at my friend Dale, who was a technical rep for us, who was with us, and I asked him, I said, "Dale, who is Jerry Sisemore?" Because John had just introduced me as Jerry Sisemore. And I could tell, the bartender was starting to react a bit strangely. He disappeared. He went back into the kitchen, and next thing you know, the kitchen staff are coming out, and the waitresses are staring through the window from the door between the kitchen and the lobby bar. And Dale leans over and he whispers, he says, "Jerry Sizemore is the starting guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he's a NFL all-pro player. He's been here several years, and he's like the man." In fact, I found out later he was the third draft pick that year, and Philadelphia had the third pick, and so he was the number one pick of Philadelphia in the first round. So as you can imagine, he was quite an entity, with himself. In fact, just to show you a little bit about this is what he looked like in uniform, number 76. And just for contrast version, this is what I looked like. Let me see if I can, there we go. This is what I looked like in 1972, 73. Again, wearing number 76. This is a team picture from Stanford University. So you can kind of get the contrast there of what was going on. And here's the other part of this that was kind of crazy. Jerry was born in 1951. I was born in 1951. Now, John didn't know any of this, but go figure. He was born in Texas. Of course, I was born in Alabama. He was 6'4". I was roughly 6'6" at the time. He weighed in at about 265. I was probably about 285. And of course, both of us had black hair. And so that was kind of the stats on him and the stats on me. And so you got to believe that when these people were starting to walk into the little tiny bar there and hearing from the bartender that Jerry Sisemore is in the bar, then the word started to spread through the bar. And of course, they started to treat me like a celebrity. I mean, they were, as we got our table, they were hovering over our table. The bus boys were coming over and making sure our glasses were full of water. And we were really getting the VIP treatment. Well, next thing you know, the owner of the restaurant shows up. He comes over, visiting our table, asking if everything is okay. He's looking at me real hard. And before the night was over, he asked me if I wanted to buy the restaurant from him. Go figure. And John saved me. He knew everything about the Eagles. And so whenever this guy would ask a question that pertained to the team or to the Eagles, John would interrupt and answer the question. So he was continuing the charade. Meanwhile, I'm in just total oblivion, because at this point, all I know is that there's a guy that plays for the Eagles named Jerry Sisemore, and John has introduced me as him in this public bar. Well, before the photo was taken of the group sitting there, that's the other thing about it. The owner of the restaurant told me that on Sunday, he tells the group, he said, I sit in the owner's box. I think the owner back then, his name was Tose, something Tose, Tose. And he sits in the owner's box, and he still can't differentiate between the fact that I'm not Jerry Sizemore, and he sees him every Sunday. But let's get it straight. He sees him with a helmet on. He sees him with shoulder pads, hip pads, the whole football garb. And here we are, kind of we were wearing suits. He's in a different environment, but with a lot of similarities towards this Jerry Sizemore guy. In fact, he comes over and he asks if we can have our picture made sitting at the table. So he slid in next to me, and there was a guy that came over with a camera, and he took the picture of us sitting at the table. And he's talking about sitting in the owner's box, and he's buying this. He's believing this. And I guess probably, knowing that maybe he was from Texas, he had a Texas drawl, and here I am with my Alabama drawl, which, kind of matched that twang that Jerry probably used if he'd ever heard him speak. I don't know if he did or not, but it made sense. It just added to the believability of what was going on. And the waitress came over, bless her heart, and she gave me a cocktail napkin, and she wanted my autograph for her son. And I don't remember what I wrote, but I guess, best wishes, stay as sweet as you are, like a yearbook. Jerry Sisemore, number 76. And she took it and disappeared. And, that photo that they took, I'm told that the photo supposedly hung in the restaurant for years afterwards. And I never really wanted to go back in there. But here's what happened. The owner offered to comp our meal. But my boss, Frank Suplee, who was a kind of a well-known guy in the community, he'd been around a lot. He knew where a lot of the upper crust, hung out and all. He got a little nervous at this point because he realized that everybody in that bar and everybody in that restaurant was buying the fact that Jerry Sisemore was visiting the place. And he got really cold feet. He wasn't going to let him comp that meal. In fact, he told me later, he said, you know what, there's a thing called NFL security, and they will view this as fraud. And I mean, prior to that point, I didn't even know the NFL had a security division, much less, one that could potentially lock me up and press charges in a town. So Frank, because he was so well known, he didn't want any part of that, and he was ready to kind of pull the plug on the charade, although he didn't tell him any different. He just refused the idea of us having our meal comped. I don't even remember what I ate. I just remember I was extremely nervous because every time I was asked a question about the team, Well, John jumped in, answered it, and kind of saved me. I'm going to pause right there. We've got a couple of folks here that Glenn from up in the Carolinas says, hey Glenn, how you doing? Jeannie Poole, Jeannie, good to see you. Thank you for tuning in. This is my sister, Anna Chozak. She lives up in New Jersey now. She says, how do I not remember this story? I don't know, Anna. I don't know if it's something that slipped by you or perhaps something I've never told. My old musician buddy, John Kelly, is on the broadcast. And thanks, John. I appreciate you tuning in. Danny Evans, my best friend from high school, is there as well. Well, let me get out of this story here, because when I use the word counterfeit to introduce this podcast, that's what I was. I was a podcast. Here's what happened. We went home, or we went to the hotel, and I picked up the following morning. The newspaper was under the door of my hotel room, and so I picked it up, and oddly enough, there was a team supplement in the newspaper that Sunday morning that had all of the Eagles team photos, from their roster and their program, and I saw Jerry Sisemore's picture, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was an actual photo of him, and I realized there was this uncanny resemblance that I talked to you about earlier. I mean, we were both over 6'4". We were both in that 265, 270 weight class. Both of us had facial hair. I had a full beard at the time. He kind of had a Fu Manchu, and, it all was matching up. I mean, we were both Southern born. We both have an accent. And I would really challenge anyone from up north to identify, an accent from Alabama versus a Texas drawl. I mean, you just can't hardly make that contrast if you're a Yankee. You know what I mean? So it was reasonable to believe, while people believed John's charade at my expense. And it was quite a night. There was one difference, between Jerry and I. I mean, he was a consensus Southwest Conference All-American at the University of Texas. And, hey, I was all Homewood playing at Samford a few years earlier. So, but it was an unforgettable night, and I guess it kind of remains one of my favorite stories. Although, believe it or not, the very next night, we went to dinner at a place in South Philly. It was an Italian place. The name of it was Cuz's Italian Grill. And this was kind of a notorious place in South Philadelphia. It's actually where Angelo Bruno, who was head of the Philadelphia mob, had his last meal prior to one of the other mobs in town taking him out. And so this place was pretty famous. But when we walked in, believe it or not, and I begged John, I said, John, whatever you do, don't introduce me as Jerry Sisemore, okay? Come on, man. We had your phone last night. Let's not repeat this fiasco. And it was a crazy situation, because right off the bat, the waiter comes up. He's looking for the drink orders, and John, in his inimitable style, says, hey, I'm John Chambers. This is Frank Suplee. This is Jerry Sisemore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And as I'm looking across the room, I could tell that there's this one table that had 3 women sitting there, and they had overheard John, because he was pretty loud, pretty boisterous, And she was looking at me, and she mouthed the words. She said, I know who you are. I know who you are. And I looked at her right in the eye and I mouthed, I'm not who you think I am. I'm not. I'm not who you think I am. But I could tell you another story about cousins, but I'll save that for a later date. But anyway, it was an interesting experience in Philadelphia that week with the hospital show and the Frankie Bradley experience and going to cousins. And I see my buddy Terry Mayfield has come online. He says, I thought you were Steve Martin. I'm not exactly sure how to take that, Terry. I love Steve Martin, but should I say, well, excuse me? No, never mind. And hey, an old friend from past, Kyle Skelton Bain. Thank you, Kyle, for looking in on us. Yeah, I guess maybe I was, but I didn't want to as far as working that magic is concerned. But I was a counterfeit. And I guess I'm thankful that it only went as far as it did. I guess our picture was taken down when it turned into a gay bar, but what can I tell you? What can I tell you? Well, listen, this is the podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. You can do me one favor if you would. If you're looking at YouTube, just hit that subscribe button. It kind of helps I'm not, by the way, I don't monetize any of this. I'm not making any money off YouTube or Facebook. I'm basically just telling these stories. But if you want to get notified of the live stream, we are live at 5 on Sundays, and would love to have you come and join us anytime you can and leave a comment. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment. I would appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great, great Sunday night. Remember, one size does not fit all. I found that out the hard way. But I love you all, and we will see you in the future. See you next week. Like, subscribe. What's the other word? Oh, share. Oh, I guess that's what it was. So share the news about my podcast. I would appreciate it. Cool? Cool. Have a great evening.